What is up, folks, and welcome back to another edition of the ONETA Show, brought to you by PTE Creative. As always, I'm your host, Evan Davies, and today with me is a lovely movie historian himself, your favorite bald man across the entire globe. It's Dylan Davies. The younger brother is here, and he decided to come up with a decision that I don't know if I can agree with on this one. But would you like to tell them what we are talking about today? So, Dylan and I, in private conversation, have been going back and forth. For those who Dylan's dipped his toe into the internet a little bit, but has done a lot of creative work back in the day. We've done movie reviews together. We've done other stuff, but he came up with the idea, what if we did a show on a cult movie and try it once or maybe turn it into a series? So we're going to see how today goes on a cult movie. And his decision to start this series was Sleepaway Camp from 1983, which, I mean, there's plenty to talk about. Not always positive, but there's plenty to fucking talk about. Oh, yeah, of course. We're getting this up on the fly. We're just going to be talking about a lot of stuff. Sleepaway Camp is 1983. It's roughly what, 90 minutes, maybe. Yeah, it's a classic, 80s. Let's just get in and out, get the hell out of here movie. You know, it's made on a shoestring budget, and yeah, take it away. Huh. That's what the internet says. Okay. All right. I am trying to get us the official runtime here. But what an interesting way to honor your mother. It was dedicated to mom, and then it was a doormat, I think. Oh, a doer. Okay. I just misread it. Yeah, 84 minutes. All right. So I feel like we should give a brief synopsis and the obligatory what the internet says is needed, even though this is a movie that is now over 40 years old, in the fact that spoilers ahead for a movie that's 41. There's one giant spoiler, but if you want to go watch the movie just because you're interested in old horror films, old cult films, it's streaming on Peacock and it's available if you have a Peacock service, which I am a happy subscriber to. But yeah, it's fucked. Yes. Well, I think my first impression was perfectly worded in my one sentence text to you, which I intentionally did not go into even any more detail because I want to save it for the show. Was the fuck did I just watch? Like, that is exactly how I felt about it. It is a film in which the briefest synopsis that I can give to our listeners and our viewers is a accident occurs in which a family dies in the first 8 minutes. And then it just completely cuts away from that. And then it's just, you're put in this weird household where two kids, their cousins, are going to camp. And once they get to camp, not hijinks ensue, murder ensues. In the most absurd 80s murder possible, and it's all about the paranoia of this camp that's oddly hypersexualized, even more than 80s comedies would love to do. It is absurd, and then the end has one of the most absurd twists I've ever seen in my life, and we will save that as part of our analysis and part of our critique. But it is the search for a killer, and there's a kid who's getting bullied all summer long, and the murders are sort of attached to that, sort of not. Yeah, that's a great way of saying that. Yeah, it's it's fucked. So where would you like to begin in this fucking discussion? Sure, let's go scene by scene. This is wild, man. Yes. um, I disagree with that statement, but at least, but I will say this: it at least feels somewhat real. Um, However, I don't know many people that could see succeed on water skis and be like frightened at the same time. You know, many people be like they freak out before they start succeeding at it. She's actively doing it and succeeding at it, and this kid's like what 12, and then and then she's just screaming, "Can we slow down? Can we stop?" So it's important to note before you get to this scene. There's the classic old movie. You got to go through the credits, so they have a long ass winding scene through this now abandoned camp that's for sale. And it's a flash forward, but it's not told as a flash forward well enough to really establish that. And so it's like you're like, where are we? Are we at the camp right now and it's abandoned and people are just using it as public land, or are we? Or was this a flash forward? What was this? And the music does not set the tone well enough at all. It's just kind of like somewhat eerie, but not. And it's not a harsh enough cut to be like, oh, we're setting the tone. Like this is something, and it's like just in the middle of the day, so there's no like twilight. There's no darkness. It's so yeah. No, no. I guess yes. The horror makeup for all the murders. I mean, it's well done. The problem is all the death scenes are so grossly negligent in their actual portrayal of what it is. So, for context, Dylan already knows this. I've mentioned this on other shows. My wife is a legitimate doctor. She's an OBGYN. She's a surgeon. This is what my wife does for a living. I was describing how the deaths happened and then how the deaths looked to her, and she was flabbergasted because she's like, "That's completely wrong." And she loves watching Tucker and Dale with me, which has over the top death scenes. She likes watching some of that stuff with me. You know, she understands that drama is going to amp stuff up. She's not one of these people that just goes, "That's unrealistic. That would never happen." She gets it. It's a movie, but she's like, "That's so wildly inaccurate that I can't even begin to like to tell you." Like, so it's sad that the makeup is the best portion because even when they're doing a great job, it makes the movie look even more second rate because it's so wildly inaccurate that like you get distracted by how good it is because you're like, that's so gruesome and grotesque and far too over the top that and not well executed otherwise that you can't be like, oh, it's just a zany comedy. It's played straight like it's meant to be a horror film and it's so fucked. Yeah, that too. Sure. Yeah. Yeah. But it is It is wild. So you start with this opening crawl that doesn't set the tone well enough. You don't know where the fuck you are. And it randomly just puts you in the middle of the lake. And there's two young kids on a sailboat, but it's not really a sailboat. It's one of the classic like paddle boats with a sail on it. And I'm forgetting the exact term for what that kind of boat is right now, and it's going to kill me because I've actually done it before. But it's essentially a paddleboard with a sail on it. A little bit bigger, I guess. And then there is a camp in the background, sort of. And presumably where there's a boat with two teenagers. It's a male counselor, the only normal looking counselor of any camp in this entire film, and he is with his presumed girlfriend or fling for the summer. And then on the back is this younger girl who could be her sister. It could not be. It could just be some random ass camper. They look similar enough that you may be able to insinuate that, but it's never actually described. And the girl wants to drive the boat, and at first he gives her mad shit, like reasonably saying like, yeah, if your dad wants to hire me for the summer because I just lost my job, sure, you can do that. And then eventually turns it over to her. And naturally, it it is literally like, oh, I don't have the mannequin up. I only have the head mannequin. I only have the hand mannequin for art. I think I have a mannequin for art. I was gonna bring it out because we'll be like, do you want to see the acting in this movie? It's as wooden as a fucking mannequin. It's absurd. Yeah. Oh yeah, it's brutal. It's brutal, dude. So, and my apologies to all of our friends because I'm just realizing our audio's been here the whole time. Our video was just gonna start kicking in because Discord and OBS aren't always friends, but that's not a big deal because you can still get everything on the show. So the family that's on the sailboat intentionally pushes their dad off, tips the boat over. They're in the water. Girl then takes the driver's seat of the boat that's actually has a water skier behind it that has the girl screaming, "No, no, please stop." Naturally, shit goes awry. You see this random ass other man talking to the dad that fell into the water, and they're all being playful and like, ha 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 ha. The the dad and the random guy on shore. I thought they could possibly. I thought it was like maybe like another dad and there was another family there because I didn't immediately want to go because I did think I was like they could be insinuating there could be something between these two men, but I was like it's 1983. I intentionally didn't read anything about this. I just went blind as much as possible, except for one trailer which clearly doesn't insinuate anything like that. And I was like, I don't think they're insinuating a gay relationship between these two men. I'm just I'm just insinuating it's a random man that they're hanging out at his house, random associate, random family member. I don't fucking know, you know. Oh, secret gay relationship. Oh, interesting. I never thought about it that way. Yeah, because it's just so nondescript and it's not told well whatsoever. So the boat that's got the water skier, so absurd, loses control because the girl's not steering properly, and then naturally they hit the fucking gas right as they're about to hit these three family members, the two kids. It's a daughter, a son, and dad. They're off the sailboat, and they're like, "Oh my god!" And they just get fucking plastered by a goddamn speedboat. Yeah, yeah, yeah. As someone who frequently now starts driving boats because of my time in Door County, Wisconsin, and my wife's family having a boat, I frequently will get behind the wheel. I don't know how that's possible. Like, I just don't even know how that's possible. And so this speedboat, who's got a fucking water skier behind it, just plasters three family members. Dad, dead. Daughter, well, it looks like it hits all three. Son looks like he may have survived, but it's nondescript. Dad, he gone. Daughter, they don't even show her. You just see a life vest come up from the depths of the water, and it's all like kind of shredded, kind of not. My assumption was that yeah. So my assumption was they got hit by the boat and she got hit by the propeller. It took away the front like section where she's buckled into the life vest, and because of the force of the boat, it kind of shredded and pushed, and then she just stayed because she gone, and like the life vest just slowly comes up out of the water. This is the opening 8 minutes of this film. Dylan and I, clearly both having watched this film now, still have no idea how this all happens. No. Yes. No. Yes. So, and that's going to go into our theming. So then you immediately just like sharp cut to the next scene. You're in this opulent 80s style over the top house. There is a mother who, I gotta be honest, I'm not trying to be rude. 99% of me says that's played by a man, but I didn't look it up. But I can't say 100% not played by a man. Ah, but it's clearly somebody who baseline guarantee is they're a horrible actor. You need to put a you need to put a huge sarcasm token on that one, dude, because I know you're fucking bullshitting. A plus acting, Dylan. Your home movies that you made when you were 8 years old and were us fucking around, and Dylan. For context, Dylan made it's a very much a joke, a parody of Titanic. The Titanic is a 2 liter bottle with Legos in it. And the lifeboats are people's hands coming into a bathtub to rescue them, and they just go, get in the lifeboats. Dylan, there was better acting in that parody film when you were like 12 than there ever was in this film. This is a fever dream. And you know me, I like bad movies. I like going back and watching crazy 70s and 80s shit. I love that stuff because I understand it's part of the absurdity. It's no different than when you go back and you watch stuff from the 30s and the 40s. If you're watching, if you're watching Bogart in 2024 for 2024 acting caliber, you're gonna think it's some of the worst shit you've ever seen. It's extremely hammy, over the top, but that was what acting was at the time. And when you go back and watch it through that lens, you're like, oh my god, he's one of the greatest actors of all time when it comes to what the genre was, setting the scene, getting emotions across. But that was the time. I love going back and capturing things in the lens of the time. But fucking Christ, dude. Like, so you get this crazy ass mom. You get this crazy ass mom who I'm 99% positive is played by a man. Not that it matters. I do not care. But it's got this over the top, almost Mickey Mouse voice of perfection. It's fucking weird. Um, yes. So she's getting her two kids ready for camp. They're about to get picked up by the bus and they're going to get sent to summer camp. So that's where you meet our two protagonists. Um, you meet Angela and Ricky. So Ricky is pretty much like a good positive character throughout this whole movie. Very protective, but not crazy protective. Of like he still lives a life. He still does kid stuff. They're what 13, maybe 12, 13. Yeah, they're about 13 years old, and Ricky is told to protect his cousin Angela, who I guess lives with them. And this is theoretically Ricky's mom. So they just get shipped off. It is a fever dream of a mom getting their kids ready for camp. And also, as someone who is a camp director that's not even a sleepaway camp, it's a day camp, I can fucking tell you, they did not pack enough luggage for that goddamn trip. A gym duffel bag. Yeah. So pretty much, it looks like a bowling ball bag, and it's just like, okay, go to camp. Are you out of your fucking mind? No, I wouldn't trust that. She fucking didn't. That's why. She's. I mean, the only medical school she can ever pass is one like straight out of fucking Beetlejuice or The Mask or some shit like that, because it's wild. So then these kids just randomly get sent off to summer camp. Another sharp cut, and then there's just buses pulling up to a random ass camp in New York, Vermontish area. Yeah, and it's up. Huh. Brought a lot of prestige to that camp. So, so we then have we're at sleepaway camp. These buses show up. All these kids, to tell you just the fucking disarray of this camp, just start sprinting off the fucking buses. As someone who is a childcare professional, up until I'm ending my tenure at the end of June, so which is why I'm letting it fly a little bit more publicly than I normally would. As someone who's been in childcare or related to childcare for the last 20 years, that is the most disorganized disarray I've ever fucking seen in my life. Where the kids are just sprinting, and not only sprinting, they're sprinting down a fucking hill, like with bags in their hands, and there's just like two random men just screaming at them, just being like, you go here," as if that's how camp gets started. It's fucking wild. No. Well, that's the best part. I thought we were setting up like a tragedy or something because I was like, this is in such disarray. I thought they were setting up like a kid tragically passing to make like a bit of a MacGuffin or a bit of like a red herring to be like, oh my god, the camp's cursed. What's happening? Because I had no idea what was happening, and I was just like, this is so chaotic. What the fuck is happening? And then you meet. It, two casts of characters that are ultimately important and not important at the same time. We meet our hypersexualized bodybuilder counselor who's like assistant director of the camp, who's in a sweater vest and short short. All right, so Ronnie, the assistant director, head counselor, whatever the fuck his name is, he's in 80s short shorts, but even still too short for the 80s because they're a little frayed and weird. And then he's in a sweater vest with nothing underneath it, and he's built like a brick shit house. Pretty much. Pretty much. So he's the assistant director of a fucking child's camp. Then you have the director and owner of the camp who's smoking on a stogie, just going, nah. Mel, who I would say overall I think is the best actor in this film. Yeah, and like he's at least before or after this. Yeah, it's brutal. So I have the written here. Acting is horrendous. Mel is the only one that is semi wooden, not wooden. Oh, it's an 11. He's an asshole who's only concerned about his money and public relations resort about his money. Dude, do you understand? This is childcare you're talking about. Childcare, the vast majority of people, unfortunately, don't like children. Where like that's the worst part is that's another like not to get too personal, but like I'm taking a break from childcare for at least a little bit once my tenure ends because it can kind of tell I'm at the end of my rope with it, and I'm just like, you know, I never lose it. I'm still completely, appropriate and very patient, but I can tell my patience isn't what it used to be. And I'm like, that's not fair to them. I need to make the best for them and their day. It's not about me getting frustrated. And this guy clearly just fucking hates anything under the age of 18 unless it is an oddly sexualized teenage girl, then he's all for it. And and he's just going man, 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 man on a fucking on a giant cigar, like straight out of a stereotype. Little bit, little bit. He looks like a Looney Tunes parody of a smoker from Gangster from the 40s. So sadly enough, he is not the most problematic character they introduce in this scene. You're seeing shots of these kids that are anywhere from like 6 to 18 running down this hill, and then they show the culinary staff of the camp. And immediately, the big over the top head chef is immediately talking about raping them. Yes! It's disgusting. And it is horrible. Horrible. And then to at least oh dude, I saw that coming a mile away, but I was just like no subtlety whatsoever, no like oh I'd never do something like that, and then clearly like a look where you're like, "Oh, that's watch that fucking guy." No, he's just straight up with it. And then he's surrounded by the rest of the cooking staff, four of which don't speak to him. And then there's the one random, very stereotypical old black man who is not all that. No, no. Huh. Interesting. No way. way you just described it. He was in a bunch of really good, famous old movies, and then he was in this. Yeah. And his son is climbing the ranks as one of the most famous things that's ever existed in movies, and he's in Sleepaway Camp. Well, no matter what, he plays quite the stereotype here of just like dumb helper black man staff. And which is again problematic. But he just goes very much so. And the guy says, well, we're back where we come from. We call them baldies. And then in the one bit of decency on the staff from the culinary members, he goes, oh, they have no idea what you're even talking about. They're way too young. And then the guy comes back, the guy who just said that they were calling baldies, he says, back where I come from, no one's ever too young. And you're like, what the fuck, dude? Like, he's working at this camp to be mad and rape children. That is this guy's goal. And that is fucked. That is horrid, dude. Dude, he's making us look real bad. He's bringing us down. He's the reason that we have Kick a Ginger Day and we have Stab Your Friends with Carrots and all that shit. Yeah, we wouldn't deserve to have lives because we're trying to ruin others. So, this is all the first 15 minutes of the movie. Like, we've just gone, I'm just going to check the time for funsies here. We've done 30 minutes already, and we're only 15 minutes in this movie because it's that fucking ridiculous. So, Angela, we're going to move on. Angela generally just doesn't speak. She just doesn't speak. She's... Yeah. Yeah, I think it's even further than that. So, she gets put in a cabin with a bunch of stuck-up bitches who are all hypersexualized. But it's all like over-the-top 80s portrayals of Mean Girls. Where it's just like shitty girls that believe they're hot shit because they're now sexually active, just making fun of anybody who is not tits out, straightforward slut. And like, I hate to use that language, but that's clearly how it's portrayed, is like, that's what they're going for. And so Ricky, the protective cousin, who's the male protagonist, was going steady last summer with Judy, who's the biggest bitch on the entire campus. And immediately his friend says, oh, did you get a load of Judy yet? And it's because she's now blossomed and she's matured and now she has breasts. And so magically, Ricky doesn't mean shit to her anymore. And she's entertaining all the advances of all the like 18-year-olds at camp, which is fucked. Because theoretically, if they were going steady, she's probably 13, but she's clearly in her 20s younger woman actress playing this 13-year-old. No. Interesting. First Vacation comes out in 84. Big career mistake here. Big career mistake. So Judy is this like stuck-up bitch who now, because she has breasts, is like just to see you next Tuesday to everybody. Yeah. 13-year-olds in summer camp, yes, where it's just hormone fueled rage, yes. Like, unfortunately, yes, as someone who has to critique that at camp and has to tell both boys and girls, like, guys, You can't be talking like that. It's like that's just not how things work, man. You can't be doing that. Yes, I can tell you it's accurate. Sadly, like that's it. That's solely it. Is that? So take us to the next scene when they're in getting their bunks and all that shit. Yeah. Yes. That's because it's really important. Yeah. Not, yeah. So Meg, who looks younger than Judy, but Judy is the fucking bitch kid, and Meg is the counselor for this group, and it's vague what age Meg is. She could be anywhere from like 17 like 25 oddly. It's very strange. I don't believe it is, but yes, I that was also my hope. But it was just very strange. And then abruptly cuts to they do some hijinks with Ricky's cabin and the boys, and it's all just bullshit. It's all just like filler kid stuff with the boys at least get to be shown in like some semblance of 80s level fun. Whether you actually think it's fun or not is a different story, but it's all just like, oh, boys will be boys kind of bullshit of the 80s, which is classic 80s filmmaking. And then it just abruptly cuts to 3 days later and they're in the mess hall. And when I say abruptly, I say that because it just says 3 days later, like they just say 3 days later. She hasn't, speaking of Angela, she hasn't eaten in 3 days. What's wrong with her? Meg just starts going in on her. The Meg, the counselor, hasn't said a word, has eaten. Meg just starts bitching her out, just being like, you gotta start talking to me. You better start answering me. She gets saved by Ronnie, the oddly sexualized fucking bodybuilder assistant director. He's the he's the only one with at least some moral fiber besides Ricky. So he's like, "Oh, well, why don't we take you to the back and try to find you something to eat?" And you can tell that it's out of care. It's not weird because as we've established, this movie's fucking weird. Yeah. It's almost as if you were trying to shoot bad publicity video as someone who's trying to currently sell his house and has to pay attention to the details of how the house is shot and all that stuff so that you're trying to sell it and make it look as best as possible. It's as if someone said, you know what we should do, the actors are in frame, but the frame should be as big as possible because we want to showcase how big this mess hall is, and it still just looks tiny as fuck. Like it, look, it looks like a camp cafeteria. But yeah, you're right. It's just like it's like they're trying. The movie's purpose in that time is look how big this mess hall is. Not let's focus on the drama. Let's focus on the character. You're correct. That framing is brutal, dude. It's brutal. Yes. And I was not intending to go shot for shot, but we have just so much to talk about. We're just gonna go shot for shot. Yes. So Ronnie takes Angela back to the kitchen, which is a huge fucking no no because that's a huge hazard. And it just in general. And he takes her straight back to head chef guy. What's head chef's name? Artie. Artie, the head chef, who is clearly a rapist. And immediately he's like, he puts on that weird, creepy child predator, trying to be nice vibe. He's like, oh, you can't eat? I'd love to take you back. Let's see if we can find something you like in the refrigerator. And Ronnie, not seeing anything, just goes, okay. Correct. Absolutely. So he just goes, okay, Angela, go back in the refrigerator, which is one of those walk-in fridges because it's a giant camp. Go back in the refrigerator with this man who's clearly 20 to 30 years older than you in a secluded place where only the two of you are going to be, which violates so many rules and so many things. And you're just like, no, that's not how you do things. And he's like, oh, I'd love to see if you can have. I'm sure I can find something you would like. And then immediately puts her in the freezer, puts her in the cooler, and is just like, oh, I've got something you're really gonna like. And just immediately starts undoing his belt and his pants. And I say this because from the time you meet that character, Artie, to the time you are in a cooler watching him possibly sexually assault or rape this young girl is 5 minutes. And I'm being generous with 5 minutes. Exactly. So there's no build, there's nothing. It's just you get one note. He is creep and he is going to be consistent to creep. And I'm not saying we should want to build towards sexual assault or rape. I'm not saying that we should ever be building towards violation. But if that is a huge danger and a huge threat, it goes to a huge issue with this movie, which is pacing and storytelling in terms of the pacing of the story. You don't build to a threat at all. You immediately just go, let's take this from 0 to 100 immediately and just be like, well, what if he just tries to rape her in the first scene they're together? Yes. Yes. Oh, obviously, you're rooting for it then. Yeah, it's fucked. So thankfully, as Artie, creepy chef, is trying to do is getting ready to do this, Ricky the cousin goes up to the table of bitches and says, "Where's Angela?" And they're like, "Oh, she went back to the kitchen. She's getting special treatment." So they're just being shitty no matter what. Judy's just a bitch to him for no reason. He's just trying to. Yeah, but like he's even just still trying to be nice and be like, "No, Judy, remember we were together last year and we were like we're so nice and kind to each other." And she's just being a bitch to be a bitch. And then he goes and he's like, "What? They're in the kitchen. I'll go find her." So not only do we have counselors ditching kids in kitchens, which is a huge fucking hazard, we then just have the ability that any kid can just go walk in a kitchen with open flames, open knives, doesn't matter. Anybody can go in there. Really not, because he's doing this in the middle of the day. This isn't like, oh, she got left behind and everything got cleaned up, but they noticed that she's not eating. Like they don't even set it as like, oh, this is the perfect time. Like not only is he a horrible child predator, he's also an incredibly stupid child predator because it's mid lunch, and Ricky just like bursts into the refrigerator and he's like, "Hey, what are you doing, you prick?" He just learned. He just learned the words. I remember when you and I first started cursing, and I can look back and go, we had no idea how to use those words properly, but we were just stringing them along, like, like just being in random places, just being like, this fucking shit ass chicken fucking, and like none of it's coherent. It's just cursing to curse. Um, it is. So he interrupts Artie, who's about to go assault Angela. And Artie throws him up against the food, threatens him, and then just says, "Get the fuck out of here." Yeah. He's just abusing children. And there's employees right around the corner. Like, it's not as if like the rest of the kitchen staff is like on a break. It's just like, no, they're just right around the corner. And he's just like, you know what? This is the opportunity for me. This is when I can have my ultimate payoff. And so there's no build to this what should be extremely dramatic and horrific moment to where could truly build tension and build horror in a horror movie is seeing, you know, the anticipation to something that everyone knows is awful and bad. There's no build, there's no anticipation, nothing. It's just immediately like, I got my opportunity, I'm taking it immediately. Yes. They show her once for about 1 second where she's like, that's it. Exactly. Oh god, it's so bad. So we escape Angela being potentially raped, and we're put in to our first death scene immediately after, where Ricky saves her. He just got the shit kicked out of him by an adult for interrupting sexual assault. And then the craziest part is this. This is like, I get it. It's the 80s and we're supposed to just go along with the movie. But even then, especially with a character like Ricky, who is shown to be a good person, has good morals in at least some way, shape, or form, actually is a good friend, good family member. He has the idea of what right and wrong is. Like, yeah, he plays with it because he's a 13-year-old kid, but like, he clearly has right and wrong in his head. Artie says, "You better not fucking tell anybody about this." And not only is Ricky not shown not trying to tell anybody that, they just don't acknowledge it the rest of the movie. You as an audience member are supposed to just be like, "Oh, he just tried to rape a girl. It it was thwarted, and now it's over, and we just move on." Yeah. So take him through the first death, if you will, because this is absurd. We probably shouldn't go scene for scene anymore, but we'll hit the high notes. We'll hit the high notes. The best. So that is one thing I definitely wanted to mention because of all the stuff I talked about with Ab. You know, my lovely wife who is science based, logic, and she's a hell of a good cook. And I say that because she knows kitchen science. She knows culinary shit. She just goes, "Why the fuck would anyone have a pot that big? You can't even heat it. What are you supposed to do with it?" And I was just like, "I don't know, man." Yes, unless you're like an industrial smelting plant or something where you're like, "Oh, well, it's easy because you have a mega fire." Yeah. Yes. Maybe. Maybe. And it sticks out like a sore thumb, so you know something's about to happen. Yeah. Correct. It's so poorly done. It's so poorly done. It's an odd dusting of brown on a full, like, also why is the entire culinary staff in white? Like, but not like chef's coats. Like, we're just talking about like white jeans, white shirts, white aprons. Yeah. So he gets pushed forward and he's like holding onto a shelf that's up against the wall and he's like leaning over the pot. But only his arms are over the pot. His head's like kind of close, but not. It's kind of like this. Yeah. So so it's important to note here, just one little side note. The hand that you see coming to push is clearly like a 35-year-old man's hand. It's clearly a male hand of some kind. I thought that was an older man's hand trying to throw some shit off. And like and so but it's clearly male hands doing this. And then yeah, as you said, Artie just pulls this 4 foot tall pot of boiling water on top of him, which was very well salted, by the way, also known as a full container of salt. And so he falls and he just gets boiled from head to toe. But then he's got these like he gets like welts and blisters. And did you notice they slightly change in the scene? Like they get worse in the scene. That's again, this is ingenious ideas if they're executed well and used properly. So the thing about it is like I know you're not a big wrestling guy, but this past weekend, the secondary company AEW they do a match that's utter garbage. It's called Anarchy in the Arena. Anything that you can think of that can be a stupid way to hurt somebody, they do it. They set someone on fire the other day. But like we said, how that pot just sticks out like a sore thumb. AEW out of nowhere, like one of the guys just disappears. And then they're on stage and other wrestlers are brawling. And then there's just two fire extinguishers there. And they just stick out like a sore thumb because you're like, why the fuck are there fire extinguishers here? They weren't there before. And then guy comes out glistening because he's clearly covered in like the specialized like Vaseline thing where like you can burn it for a little bit and not get hurt. And you're just like, huh, wonder what's gonna happen. Then a guy comes out with a flamethrower, he's on fire, and then magically two wrestlers just show up with fire extinguishers. You're like, huh, wonder how that happened. That's how the pot feels. And that's how, like, exactly. And so this is how this boiling pot scene, you're like, why is this 4 foot thing? And again, the effects, as you said, it looks gruesome. It is horrific. It is terrifying. And it pulsates. You can see it. This is extremely good makeup for a low budget early 80s film. I will give it that. And they did a tremendous job. And so it's the kind of thing that those are the small little details. If you go back and watch some of these movies where people had to be like super creative, where if you want to make an independent film, you want to start getting to be a creator on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, whatever, and you're looking for, okay, I want to create, I have the brain to create, but I don't have a budget. I don't have a fucking Marvel $300 million budget to make Avengers Endgame. What do I do? You look at those tricks and you're like, oh my god, like this is somewhat attainable for me if I want to do something. You know, like there's a reason everyone makes horror movies when they're first starting because they have no money. Horror movies, you need the dark and you're set. You can make it work, and so much of it is daylight. Too much of it is daylight. And again, it's to its own detriment, and that's why like you see something like the makeup in this boiling scene, and this guy's fucking horrifically burned, and it's perfect for the makeup, and really being like, it doesn't look real, but it looks grotesque in an over the top horror movie way, and then it's just wasted because it's surrounded by trash. It's like finding a needle in a haystack, but the haystack is just covered in cow shit. And like you found it, but you went through mountains of shit to get to it. It does feel like that. It feels like that. So this is kind of how the death scenes continue. The movie continues. There are far too many scenes. Like again, we probably shouldn't go scene for scene anymore because now we are, Jesus Christ, almost an hour into this fucking thing because we're having so much fun ridiculing this movie. But there are, okay, that one, it's not technically a death. He is shown leaving. And the only important part about that is Mel is in the kitchen and he just bribes the rest of the staff to say, we don't need to tell the kids about this. Yes. Yes. Yeah. No, exactly. So it strains so much credulity. It strains so much, the ask of the audience to suspend belief or suspend disbelief, I should say, is strained so much that it's it's like when you're seeing that tooth in a kid's mouth and I'm saying like there's no reason that tooth should still be in their mouth and it's hanging on by a thread. And you're like, no, this movie is essentially saying, no, you can completely eat with that with no problems. Like, this is that level's movie of that. Oh, they're trying hard. So we go forward. Angela is just completely ridiculed all the time. We see Ricky in all these weird shots with all the boys that are supposed to be just fun little camp games that make no sense, but they're oddly sexual too. Yeah. So so they do a classic movie prank where there's the nerdy kid in the group and then Mozart is what his name is, and because he's glasses, he has to be the fucking loser. So they blindfold him on the. They put it like a towel over his face, and they have him laying down. And then Ricky's just constantly telling him like, "No, if you think about it hard enough, your body won't let you sit up." And and then another kid stands over the top of him and pulls his pants down. So when inherently when Mozart sits up, his face is going to go directly into his ass. First of all, correct. One, who volunteers for that job? But two, this movie hurt my feelings because even if you don't pay attention during childcare trainings, which I'm not advocating, you should definitely do that, but you know that is child endangerment in so many ways. And it's clearly like a 13-year-old kid going into a 13-year-old kid's ass. How did anyone think this was okay to film? How did it get past so many producers? How did it get released? How? Yes. Like, so that's one of my notes is my last note that I have, it feels like it was written by one of two people. And I'm not going to go to person number two because that's more in depth for later. But one, a kid who just learned how to use curse words and is trying to be deep. This is what this movie feels like it is being made of. So in the meantime, we see that, and then we go like straight into a baseball game where they're just a full blown baseball game, and they show far too much of the game. Ricky makes a stupid bet with the other team where it's hypersexualized. I just can't remember the line because I was like, who's talking like that? But then they make a bet of like you have to fuck like five like people or something like that. It was wild, bro. Because it's an absurd fun line. But yeah, this is Ricky's first great profanity laced rant at somebody. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, nothing says hardcore baseball players like gentle, soft underhand pitches. Yes. So you cut to in this you see two counselors who are oddly in cutoff tops and short shorts that are frayed, and they're all clearly in very good shape. And you're just seeing way too much of a trend where you're like, what's going on here? Like, why is this how we're presenting people? I understand it's the 80s and it's different. And it like we're coming out of the 70s where like we weren't fully into the whole like men don't do that. Not because it wasn't a thing, but because most people would just take on face value. Oh, I cut my shirt off because I'm in shape and I want to look in shape. Like most people wouldn't get straight to the like, oh, you must be gay like the '80s movies would think you are. Yeah, and not only is it a huge trend, it's clearly like a mandate. Like all of the there's far too many instances of overt sexual representation throughout the entire film. I think it's the second. I think it's the former, not the latter. But sadly, because of the other scenes and the way this movie was shot, I think it's possible. So we go through. Angela's getting ridiculed forever. Then randomly, there's this random social. These older boys start trying to ridicule her to go out to go skinny dipping with them. Which I don't know what group of like eight teenage boys says we should go skinny dipping. We've made a decision. We're gonna do that. Now we're gonna go find girls to do it with. Like groups of boys do not do that, and it's not because it's right or wrong. It has nothing to do with like false moral representation, and it has everything to do with that's one of the biggest things that strains credulity. It's just like a group of like 8 to 10 boys being like, "Let's go skinny dipping, yeah," and then let's go find some girls. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So it's like all 17, 18-year-old boys. They're ridiculing Angela and like insulting her, but also trying to get them to go, get her to go skinny dip because at least she's a girl. So then it then just abruptly cuts to outside. They have, oh yeah. Yeah, so you have Mel, who's clearly in his 60s, in his fucking 80s leisure shoots and shit, if not older, yes. And you have Meg, who is in that vague late teens, early 20s, and I'm just gonna guess from the strain of this movie that she's in her teens. And looking back at the trends of how camps used to be run, where they would just trust teenagers with children. Um, because I also just saw like the parables because one of my favorite movies of all time is Meatballs with Bill Murray, and because it just hits home in so many ways, and how like that movie compared to this one, how they're both poorly made, but one has this like incredible heart because it's lighthearted and it's funny, but there's a heart to it, and then you have Sleepaway Camp where everything's just like sex and death. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It's wild. So you have a group of boys fighting in this thing because Ricky, of course, is trying to protect Angela. They fight, they separate. He goes on one of his rants that you're a cocksucker and I'm gonna get you and like all this kind of stuff. None. Exactly. So they unsuccessfully convince Angela to go. They have a group of girls that follows them out. That's telling them we're not going skinny dipping. We're not going to do this. They convince one to go with one of the guys on a canoe into the lake. They're both fully clothed. So all the girls are like, we're not doing that. The boys still jump in and do it, which is like so wildly ridiculous. So the boys jump in a pack and all just start taking off their clothes. And they're like, yeah! And they're cheering that they're all naked in the lake and skinny dipping while all the girls watch and just walk away. And they're like, fuck off. Like, but this one girl goes on a canoe. It's just dumb. The girls part, yes. The boys part, not so much. So the one girl goes out, and it's important to say they're both clothed in this. They go out on this canoe, and then he starts joking around and constantly rocking the boat back and forth, and eventually, and Kenny and Leslie, and they're rocking the boat back and forth. And those characters are not relevant at all in this movie except for this one scene. Kenny was the first guy to approach Angela. Wasn't the rudest of them, sadly, but he was the first to approach Angela at this dance to say go skinny dipping with it. He intentionally tips the boat over. She gets pissed. She just swims back to shore. She's just like fuck off. He sees her swim away. He then goes underneath the turned over canoe, comes up, and he's like, "Oh, what's this?" And then he hears things coming, and he's like, "Oh, is that you coming back? What are you doing?" Even though he saw her directly go towards the shore. And then a theoretical girl pops out of the water. You don't see her face, you just see the back of her wet head. And he's just like, "What are you doing here?" And then she takes one hand and just goes and drowns him. Yeah, yes. Sort of. So, one hand, you are swimming. You are actively swimming in a lake underneath a canoe. And with one hand, you just go and push somebody down into the water. And he just drowns. That's it. The canoe stays tipped over and upside down the entire time. It, the boys just leave him there. They're like, "Oh, he's fooling around. He's a fucking idiot." So his group of people just leaves. The girls leave because they're like, "Fuck you. You're a bunch of idiots." The next day, it's just shown that the beach lifeguard, he's bitching and moaning up a storm because all the boys caused mischief and were like throwing like chairs and tables and stuff into the lake. So he calls them all peckerheads. He's throwing chairs. He's just mad. He comes over to this canoe. He's like, "How the fuck did this get in here?" He tips the canoe over. In the canoe, on land, washes up Kenny, who is drowned and pale. He's covered in seaweed, sort of, but not really. And then out of his mouth pops out a snake that slithers off his mouth. Out of his mouth and on top of his head. It is. Again, it looks good. The snake is so wildly unnecessary and just strains any believability. But again, great way of showing something. Wasted by all the rest of it. Yeah. Yes. No reason. So we continue the film. Angela's getting ridiculed. She's starting to become friends with Ricky's good friend. What's his fucking name? Paul. Paul starts showing an interest in her. She starts showing an interest in him. Her first line happens where the first time she ever speaks, she speaks to Paul because Paul is being nice to her and showing interest in her. We're continuing the movie. The girls are still being mean to Angela. It's progressing. Yes. So you're right. That is an important distinction. A cop shows up in the next scene after we find Kenny drowned with a snake coming out of his mouth. It's a wild ass sentence. The cop says, Mel's insisting. It's Mel, Ronnie, the buff count like assistant director, and there's one cop, and then there's some people in the background taking away the body. And the cop goes, "This wasn't blunt force trauma. There's no evidence of that whatsoever." I'm no expert. Yeah, obnoxiously, I'm no expert, but that's not how it works. And but in good fashion, covering his ass, he says, "But ultimately, at the end of the day, we're gonna have to wait for the tox. We're gonna have to wait for the coroner's report, which is gonna be a little while from now." Mel just interrupts him like 7 times. "It was an accident. It was an accident. He hit his head and he drowned." He's yelling at a cop. He's not worried about the kid. He's not worried about the other kids. He's not worried about anybody's safety. He's not even worrying about this. He's not even saying the things that you think a character would like that and say. It's like, this is going to cost me money. Can I please pull you to the side so I can talk to you about this? Not in front of people. They're just talking in front of a crowd of 30 people in the middle of the camp. Nothing. He just goes, it was an accident. As his assistant director is saying, I remember that kid being a pretty good swimmer. Like, that seems eerie it seems weird that he would just drown. It was an accident. He couldn't swim. He's an idiot. Like, and then he ends it by saying, well, now I have the unfortunate responsibility of calling this boy's parents and telling them that their son's dead. And I'm like, it runs the total gamut of him being a shitbag. No one calls him on that detail, and then finally he's like, well, I guess I gotta go call the parents. The cops don't say, has anyone been informed? Like, the cop would take advantage of that. No. Nothing. No. And the worst part, they need the stereotypical dialogue in this movie. So we continue the movie. Mel starts picking up on little hints because he's like, Ronnie's like, well, maybe there's a murderer around. Or Mel's like, maybe there's a murderer. And Ronnie's like, well, let's not get crazy. I mean, it was two accidents, whatever. Yeah, because he's starting to see little pieces that Angela's involved some way, shape, or form with everybody. Which I don't know how anyone would know that about Artie because no one knew that except Ronnie. But nonetheless, the movie can. Yeah, you never know. So we're continuing. Angela's getting bullied like no one's business. All these random games are happening while this is happening. Eventually, Angela's just walking through camp. Another thing that's just strained any believability whatsoever. On top of a cabin, on the roof of a cabin, there's a group of older boy campers led by their counselor. Yeah, there's a group of boys as young as 12, led by their adult counselors, so to speak, who are having a water balloon fight on top of a roof. so they so Angela's just walking, minding her own business. And they just chuck a water balloon at her off a roof. And then Ricky sees it. He runs out of his cabin. He's like, you cocksuckers, you pricks. I'm going to get you for this. I'm going to fucking kill you. Like, all this random shit. Like, I don't think he says I'll kill you. But it's just like, he definitely says cocksuckers and pricks. I remember that one. Mel stops him. Starts telling him to get the fuck off the roof. Get over here. I'll kick you all out. And then starts yelling at Ricky for his foul mouth. And you know what? You don't get any time today at the social either. None of you can have any fun. That's his punishment for child endangerment and bullying is no fun for you. No dance for you tonight. No, that's later. So then the counselor who throws the fucking water balloon at Angela, he goes to take a shit in the next scene. The most. He goes to take a wicked dump. These are quotes, people. There's a screen to the window above his stall, to the outside, and in the clearly the most believable death of the movie, someone cuts the screen and on a stick drops a bee's nest. Yes, it's all in a handkerchief on the back of a stick. I wouldn't have done well. As someone who's allergic to bees, yeah, that wouldn't have been fucking fun. So, but when we're talking the most believable death, that's heavy air quotations because He comes out and he looks like comic book level mutilated. Someone has stuck a broom handle through the handles of the door to the stall so he can't get out. Doesn't think to crawl out from underneath. He's just, he's just banging on the door. He doesn't think to crawl from underneath. He finally breaks the door, but it's because as his body is collapsing from death, and it's just mutant purples and reds. Like, he looks like one of the like main characters from Attack on Titan in his arm and his like neck. And he's been stung to death by bees. But it doesn't even show his face. It just shows like mutilated flesh, and they're like, he died. it's again, it's gruesome, it's grotesque, it's disgusting. It makes you, it gives you that visceral reaction, and it's just wasted. Mel comes to the conclusion that Ricky's the killer. He believes Ricky is the killer because, Angela gets bullied, Ricky comes to save her, Ricky then takes revenge on people. We continue. We have Paul, who is trying to advance sexually with Angela, to no avail. Yeah. Yeah. So it's a charming little 5-second exchange in an 84-minute movie of slop. So I do like that line. I will give it to you. And the way it's executed, you're like, oh, that could be little playful, smart ass kids. Okay. Especially in the 80s after Smokey and the Bandit and all this shit has come out. And you're like, okay. So Angela eventually is getting harassed by Judy and Meg so much. And because Paul is giving her attention, which is bad because she's flat chested and she's weird and no one speaks to her, so she doesn't deserve to be treated like a human being. She's sitting on a bleacher or on a bench near the lake where they're all swimming, and they're saying, "You gonna jump in?" And she's just not really talking to them, not answering. And they just pick her up and they just take her to the lake and they just chuck her in. Ricky gets stopped by Mel as this is happening to have a conversation. Oh, how's your summer doing? All this kind of stuff. Just trying to have a quote unquote normal conversation. Quote unquote normal. Meg and Judy are carrying a girl screaming, flailing out on a dock to chuck her into a lake. You don't know if this girl can swim. You know nothing. I don't care. Ricky's like, oh shit, I gotta help her. He starts to go. Mel grabs him, bear hugs him. Oh, what are you gonna do? You're the killer. I know it was you. Ricky's just like, what are you talking about? And they just chuck Angela into the lake. And Mel's just like, see, you're gonna go kill someone again? And he's like, what the fuck are you talking about? Yes. There's multiple scenes where Judy is wearing a shirt that just says Judy. Yeah. It's so dumb. I think I'm gonna start wearing shirts that just say Evan, because it's glorious. So we're continuing. We get to the big social at the summer. We're getting towards the climax of the movie. Paul has now, quote unquote, cheated on Angela because Judy kissed him to piss off Angela. They've All right. What you got for me? Oh yeah, that's fucking wild. So Meg harasses her. Meg leaves. Judy's just browbeating the shit out of Angela, making fun of her, saying, "I bet you don't even have hair down there." Correct. Not the smartest. Well, I mean, she's got boobs now, so who cares? She has boobs. That's her value in life. She has boobs, and this is her determining this, not us. She is determined. She's determined her value in this world is being sexually active as a 13-year-old girl because she has boobs. So she's doing this. There's one counselor that's been with Angela and Meg's group the whole time, but she's the classic nice, doesn't talk much. She comes in and comforts. She comes in and comforts Angela after Meg just kicks the shit out of her all the time. Yes. Yeah, she's the complaint department because she's the soft one that actually cares and will listen. Judy says essentially, yes, she's kind and she's actually a good counselor that cares. But she's always in the background just trying to get Meg to just fucking chill. Judy's just fucking browbeating Angela, being like, "I bet you don't even have hair down there. Why won't you shower with us? Are you queer?" And she gets up and then she tells this other counselor, the other counselor tries to get Judy to stop. She tells her to fuck off. Judy tells the other counselor to fuck off. And then she just slaps her across the face. So she just Judy just. So the counselor loses her temper after being told to fuck off by a 13-year-old and just slaps the shit out of Judy. And so many violations of good care, child endangerment laws are being broken every scene. None. Just wild shit for the sake of wild shit. We make it to the big social at the end. What do you got? Yeah. I like I like how he's talking as if Ricky is Anakin Skywalker in the prequel movies. I see the hate in his eyes. I can feel it. Like, so we've established we get to this big social, and beforehand the counselors all say, "You have the night off, you have the night off, everyone else is on." Meg is one of the counselors that doesn't have off. She immediately approaches Old Man Mel and says, "You remember that dinner? You remember that dinner that you promised me?" He's like, "Oh yeah, sure. How about 7 o'clock, my place tonight, or something like that?" And she's just like all for it. She is. It is weird. So, because there's like a 40 to 50 year age gap there, and nothing about him says, "Yeah." Like, I don't. I think it's more. So I have some thoughts that to sum some things up that I think will answer that question a little bit. But that could be a logical. Honestly, with the disarray of this argument, I might be giving too much credit to thematic things and just being like, maybe they just, yeah, maybe it was supposed to be like some hot no name actor, like attractive hot, and they were just like, yeah, that's why she's into him. Yeah, let's get Mel. So we're going about big socials happening. Angela randomly has this weird little turn where she's already pushed Paul off her when he tries to advance sexually. She's freaked out when she kisses him. Yeah, yeah. And doesn't like it. Yes. Yes. But you can tell there's conflict, and that's one of the few like realities to puberty and teenagers that's in this film, because it's not a coming of age film, but you need to have some common ties to make you feel like it's real and it's happening. And that was a good little moment. Yeah. Right. So yeah. So she's been sexually advanced on past what she likes. The boy she likes has kissed another girl, apologized, and then she says they're going to the big socials happening. And there's a lot of moving pieces. Meg wants to get with Mel. They make a date for that night. They're all getting ready for the big social. Meg goes back to their bunkhouse and she needs to get ready. She needs to shower. She's just talking shit with Judy. Still just fucking being rude to Angela for no reason. And she's like, "Oh, I need to take a shower. Are the showers still on the other bunkhouse? Because she can't get in line. She can't cut the line of girls that want to shower first." And Judy's like, "Yeah, I think so." She goes over to the other bunkhouse to the other showers. She leans up against the shower wall, and then just gets fucking carved down her back with a knife that's coming through the wall. She just stays there and takes it. She just stays there and takes the knife in her back, man. And like it goes all the way down her back, and instead of leaning forward, trying to escape, nothing. Also, did you notice the Lover Boy poster on the shower door wall? Love that shit. That was great. I don't even know if that's time wise accurate. I think Lover Boy's biggest hit came out in 1982, but there's like a lover. You can see Lover Boy with clearly like three boy band members on the bathroom door wall, like going into the shower hall. Yeah. So I was just like, nice little touch there, guys. But um, but she just like she's in the shower. She sighs. She closes her eyes. She leans up against the wall. Knife down her back. Yeah. No. And she's just there. And then she's just dead. She's just standing as a dead body, like the stiff and Goonies in the fucking ice cream freezer. She's just standing up dead in the shower, and the shower's just going on. And then the killer wipes off a knife that was hinted at because it was shown to be Ricky's fellow camper's knife, ages before in the movie. No. Yeah, the killer holds the knife under the faucet, under the shower head, kind of cleans it, kind of gets some of it off, and then just turns the water off and just leaves. You this whole time you've never seen the killer, you don't know who it is. You're just seeing little vague things, and you're being thrown these little red herrings, and you're like, "What the fuck?" Meg, so dumb. Yes. Right, because like who else is gonna do it? Angela's being, treated horribly, so of course she has the motive to kill them, and Ricky's being shown to be the great protector. So you're supposed to be thinking that it's Ricky this whole time, and but Angela's shown no violence. She's just shown to be helpless. So like you're using a 2024 lens of seeing all these different horror movies do this from a 1983 lens. You're like, no, she's the innocent girl. Like outside of like Carrie and shit like that, none of these movies really exist to show like the quiet girl's the one who's the killer. So maybe at the time was it was a little bit better, but it does not hold up. Nothing holds up in 1983 even in this movie, but nonetheless, it does not hold up from that sense. The big social's happening. Angela goes outside with Paul and says, "Meet me by the lakefront." She's been shown to be. Is that after our next death scene? Yes. So we're starting to we're starting to get all these different scenes popcorned together. One scene, a counselor has like a 6 or 7 year old boy group. There's like 4 or 5 boys. He's just going out in the middle of the woods on a little camping trip with them. They have sleeping bags, and that's it. And they're just hiking through the woods, and he finds a spot. He says this would be a good spot. He takes one kid with him to go get firewood, and he just leaves the 4 of them there. And he's just like, well, he's setting it up first, though. So we have that scene. We then have another scene where we see um, little bits and pieces of the social starting. We then see bitch Judy. She doesn't want to go to the social. She wants to fuck this older boy who's snuck into their cabin. Exactly. They're making out. You have to kiss so wet. He gives her another shitty response. They immediately go back to kissing. So that's accurate to teenagers. How they would not like how the other one's doing it. Be shitty with each other and say, well, the goal is still to make out, so we're going to do this anyways. You hear a commotion coming. The kid hides underneath Judy's bed. And then Mel's at the door. Doesn't knock. This is a girl's fucking cabin. Doesn't knock. Doesn't announce himself. Doesn't make any sort of gesture to try to say, hey, I'm an older man that's coming to check on something. I should try to respect your privacy. He just opens the door. Just, yeah. No, common courtesy, common decency, respect for people, respect for women. Those do not happen in Mel. Respect for death, respect for people's lives. They don't matter to Mel. So Judy fakes reading in the dark. Mel doesn't question it at all. Why the most social, sexually forward, promiscuous person in the entire camp who's clearly active socially with everyone decides when she says, oh, I was tired, I just wanted to read. Doesn't bat an eye, because his only concern is, where's Meg? I want to find Meg because I want to fuck this young woman. I'll say woman just out of courtesy, because she could very well just be a late teenager. And she says, oh, I know, she went to the other bunkhouse to shower. And he's like, okay. And then the only thing he says about that is, reading can be bad for you in the dark for your eyes. She's like, yeah, I know. Then doesn't flip on the lights, doesn't try to do anything for her. He just goes, okay, and he just leaves. Jesus Christ. So legal, but fucked up. Still fucked up. Technically legal, which I guess makes it one iota better, but the bare minimum of legal. And he just leaves. And he leaves Judy. The guy gets out from underneath Judy's bed, and she's just like, she clearly wants to keep going. And he just goes, now I'm afraid of getting caught. And he just gets up to leave, and she just fucking berates him until he leaves. Yeah. Oh, yeah. She's such an asshole. So she's berating this guy who leaves because he's like, "Oh, I don't want to be caught by someone, doing something we're not supposed to be doing." Which one of the few ironic moments of not morality but pseudo morality in the movie. Yeah, at least logic. And then randomly he leaves. We're just left with Judy. We get, I think, the scene of the counselor taking the young boys out to the woods. We go back to Judy. Judy's curling her hair. For what? I don't know, because she's already insulted the social and doesn't want to go and clearly just wants to fuck somebody. And then the door opens. She just starts insulting the person immediately. You don't know who it is. It's clearly insinuated it's the killer. It could have been better, but it wasn't that bad, I could tell. Yes. Right. So it's meant to be like, it's meant to look like you can kind of see the face, and if you're paying attention, you can see it's probably Ricky with a giant. So you can tell it's Ricky with a giant fucking Cher wig on, and he goes over, and she just goes, "What? What the fuck do you want? Why are you here?" The killer punches Judy in the face, puts a pillow. She's knocked out, sort of. Takes her pillow, smothers her, but then picks up the hot curling iron, which the only attention to detail this entire movie has. There was a burn mark from the hot curling iron on the bed, which I was like, that is an odd level of detail for this movie that has not paid attention to any details whatsoever. But they were on top of that one. Picks up the curling iron, and it's not clear where they put the curling iron, but it's insinuated. It's insinuated heavily that it's in the vagina. It's in the private area of Judy. So she's being. Yeah. That's wild. Wild, where it's not shown, but it's insinuated that Judy is both being smothered and burned in her private parts, because who knows how accurate she is. Everything is being burned down there by a hot curling iron, and yet, again, odd attention to detail. There's no screams because there's a pillow over her mouth, and the one time I think they should leave logic behind and just give a little bit more struggling noises or something to insinuate the agony that this young girl is going through. They don't. They went, well, no, if she's being smothered, she couldn't scream loud enough for help. Exactly, because she's not suffering, but she's suffering. It's so strange. So, like, we're critiquing both the construction of the movie and what actually happens at the same time, which is why I've kind of just stopped saying who cares about how long this podcast goes in terms of scene by scene. This is all happening wildly. And then the killer just pulls Angela's bed after she's dead, pulls the bed out from the wall, pushes her body up against the wall, and falls to the floor. And the killer just goes and pushes the bed over her dead body and just leaves her. Meanwhile, Mel goes to the shower house, finds Meg's body. But how does he find Meg's body? Meg's body, which for some reason has somehow stood up against the wall this entire time with no problems. Mel's within 8 to 6 feet of the shower. Magically, right as Mel gets in the room, that's when the body falls out. Yes, but at least that makes sense. She was shoved in there, and then the second any tension is given away, it falls over. Because Clue is a tremendous movie, glorious chef's kiss. I I can't wait to do a podcast on Clue with you because it's going to be fun because we both love that movie. But at least there's logic in that. There's no logic. She's been standing up the whole time, and then magically Mel shows up and she just goes, bleh. And then there's just these big carve marks. That's the sad part is that one. You could have done a little bit more with like this wet, decaying body almost, and it's just like a track mark of red. Right. It's hilarious. And Mel just like, she's dead. She's dead. Yes. He needs to stop it. We then get a scene where it's teased that Angela goes to Paul before the social and says, "Meet me by the lakefront." And he's like, "Really?" And she's just like, "Yeah." So it's breaking her rules of being fearful of water. It's breaking her rules of being alone with Paul. It's breaking her own rules of being in a precarious situation put on by herself. She's breaking all of it. We cut. We then get. Oh, there's a lot of Jersey accents in this, and it's brutal. Yes, like it's so Jersey, upstate New York. It's brutal. And being on the East Coast, I can tell you, Jesus fucking Christ, is that accurate? So I don't know, because we haven't gotten that one yet. So she says, "Meet me by the lakefront," violating all of her rules. We then get the cutscene. The counselor is just sleeping in a sleeping bag on random ass leaves in the middle of the woods with these five younger kids around him, and they all start screaming, "I want to go back." And he just goes, "Ah, fine." And he gives in, and he just leaves. He just leaves this group of boys. "I gotta go get the stuff and get the truck." He leaves four kids by themselves. Oh no, they're 7, 8 years old. It's like they're young kids. He just leaves them, and you're wondering why do these people matter? You're gonna find out soon. But at the same time, they don't. So we go through. We see Ronnie talking to somebody. Uh, is that when they start talking about? Oh, we have to start figuring some stuff out. Mel finds Ricky, just kicks the shit out of this 13-year-old kid. Yes. Yeah, he's hammer fisting this fucking 13-year-old boy. "You're the killer. You killed Meg." He doesn't care about anybody else. He only cares about Meg because he's only worried about how it affects Mel. And he just beats the shit out of Ricky, and then just like gets up and walks away. And then he gets up and walks away like nothing happens. He walks like, I don't know, 20 yards. He's in the archery field of the camp. You see the killer holding an arrow. Not notched with an arrow. Not the bow and arrow like locked and ready in position. No, the killer is holding an arrow in their fist down at their side. And then 2 seconds later, you see the arrow sticking through the middle of Mel's neck. And he just drops and dies. Yeah, that happens. We then cut. There's four kids in the woods. The counselor comes back. He starts freaking out. You want to know why? Take it away, Dylan. Yes. Absolutely. Exactly. So exactly. Makes no sense. These four kids, you just see mutilated sleeping bags. And they've clearly been stabbed to death and carved up, but it's just like carved up sleeping bags. There's no evidence that the kids are actually in it. You're just meant to insinuate, oh fuck, this killer just killed four kids. This counselor, who is such a shitty job of a counselor, just leaves four kids in the woods and returns to find them all stabbed to death. He runs back. At this point, we have, in the span of about 10 minutes, we have Meg's dead, Judy's dead, Ricky's been beaten to shit, four random kids have all been killed. The same cop from before shows back up. Ronnie, the one good camp director counselor, who's still irrelevant and also an idiot, but the one good one, he rallies the troops. He gets them all together. The cop says, you all go to these you find the campers, you get them in their cabins, they don't leave, you make sure they're safe, that's it. Ronnie takes the one nice female counselor with him. And they just run off. And you No, I was paying attention. I of all the effects. Yeah. Of all the effects they could have done in the movie, they thought fake mustache. We'll save money that way. Well, also I don't think this movie gives no signs that it wasn't shot out of sequence with everything. So also, you could have just shifted one or two scenes around in your shooting schedule and let this guy kind of grow a mustache, and it would have worked. Correct. And there clearly wasn't many takes in this movie. It wasn't like there was a. It wasn't. We're not doing 50 takes being like, let's get the best one. This is like three takes, maybe. It's kind of what I'm thinking. Yeah, exactly. So Ronnie and the one good female counselor, quote unquote, the complaint department, because we can't remember her name, they make it to the lake. We have no insinuation of what happens before. We see Angela with her back to the camera, sitting or kneeling at the lake, clearly nude. You can kind of tell in the distance, Paul's laying in her lap. He's nude as well. And they're like, are you. She's cradling his head. And the counselor's like, oh my god, are you okay? Can we help you? Is anything wrong? Yeah. It's so bad. It's so bad. And then Angela just gets up, stands up, spins, and you just see a shot of fucking Paul's head. Oh no. Yes. So now we go to the big twist ending and everything. So you see that they try to. It's not paced well because I believe this scene is all one scene. They show two kids, who are the two little kids from the initial lake scene, seeing their dad in a sexual encounter with the same man that was on the shore that he was talking to right before the boating accident. So they were clearly in a gay relationship in some way, shape, or form. And They're two gay lovers, and these kids are snickering about it at the door, seeing what's happening. Then you see the same two kids who are insinuated and clearly implied to be brother and sister, and the brother is slowly being E.T. trying to touch his sister's chest. Oh, I'm sorry. That's back. I'm sorry. That was a former flashback when Paul tries to take advantage of Angela. And then that's when she freaks out and she's like, no. And she just like runs away from Paul. The Paul shit insinuates. And then she's like, no, meet me by the lake. Meet me at the lakefront. Ah. And it's not good. It's not good foreshadowing. It's so obvious you're like, huh, wonder if Angela's killed anybody here. But her eyes are like murder saucers, and she's just like, yes, beat me by the leg. And you're like, he looks like Doctor Finkelstein from fucking Nightmare Before Christmas, just like. Maybe she so wouldn't even for a Tim Burton movie. That'd be tough, man. Maybe I can see what you're saying. So a little bit. So they're like, "Are you okay?" It goes into this fucking flashback sequence. We get Dr. Finkelstein kid after surviving his sister and his dad have both been fucking murdered in a ridiculous speedboat accident. He gets to this random woman's house who's his aunt, I guess, and she just goes, yeah. And then it's just, oh, you're a wonderful boy. It's so wonderful. We have such a wonderful boy. But we already have a boy. You know, it'd be great. A little girl. And he just goes, you'll be my little angel. And he's just like, automaton. Clearly, like, he's supposed to just be like, I am malleable because I am head injury. This is my life now. And then you just cut hard from that to Angela's holding the severed head of Paul. She stands up, she turns around, and there's just a prepubescent boy's body with the tiniest little penis, and she's just like this. Yeah. Yeah, he's wearing a mask with a superimposed Angela, and Angela's face is just. It is wild. Where you just go, okay. So the big twist ending is the killer has been Angela all along because Angela has been motivated because she is actually he technically. So we get into a whole from a 2024 viewer perspective. The murders happen because they're trans and they were forced to be trans. No. And this is where like my biggest issues with this movie come from when I think if I'm trying to give it credence. Again, I have an English degree. I'm meant to look into shit as I'm evaluating a story, right? All of my notes are overt sexual representation. Why is every adult, with few exceptions, presented in a sexualized way? Sex is a punishment. Like anything that has anything to do with sex. Like even when you want to say, no, the water balloon, there's no sex there. It's clearly revealing, more physicality through this white shirt, this prepubescent child's body that could theoretically reveal something if that happens. So like All the kills are insinuated to something with sex in some way, shape, or form. Jesus Christ. Like, that is horrific because, like, it's just like out in the darkness, this creepy body that. Like, it looks like they built a scarecrow of a 12-year-old naked boy, superimposed Angela's face that's frozen in, like, rigor mortis fucking death vampire. Fucking wild, dude. I was like, whoa, dude. So, wild shit. Just utterly wild shit. And it, like, the only thing I will say that was successful about that reveal to me, because I felt, personally, I was like, she's got to be the killer. She's got to be the killer. Because they're setting up Ricky to ham-fisted, like, protector. If you go that route, it'll be the same reaction they had to. Like, I remember watching Knives Out for the first time, and then when it turns out Chris Evans' character is the killer, I was just like, so why do we need this movie? Like, that's what we thought it was all the time. Yeah, exactly. So at least it's not the red herring, but I was like, well, it's got to be Angela. Like, who else is here? Because otherwise, the only route could have thought to be taken was we're gonna out of nowhere go supernatural and just be like, there's a fucking murderous spirit of the dead kid in the lake, like like a murdered nerd. Yes, and it's so fast. Yes, the thing I thought about is such a big fan of Interview with the Vampire is she is like rigor mortis, stone faced, like Stephen Reyes vampire in Europe when he's like and he pauses for like 2 seconds. Her face just stays like that for like a fucking minute, and you're just and they like, whoa, dude. Yeah, yeah. And like they spend way too much time lingering on this prepubescent boy with Angela face mask on, and he thought he thought it was so smart, and that's why the second person in terms of archetype, I thought this is the note I wrote. A college student with no editor believing they're going to make the most avant-garde and sexually provocative film from a theory standpoint ever. Dot dot dot. But was written the night before it was due to the professor. Like, that is how this to me reads like when I was in class and we had to do theory work, and someone like, and I've been in this situation, anyone who's been in a creative writing situation or a theoretical analysis situation in college, high school, even, or even further on in graduate level work or entertainment, everyone's been in this situation once where, because you put the pieces down on your head, in your head, you're like, no, that makes perfect sense. Look, like, it's explained, and she's been scarred, or he's been scarred to believe that she's a girl, and so all the punishments are based on a sexual nature. Everything is there. It's punishment of what's happened to her and all this kind of stuff. It's fucking wild because it appears as though, like, it felt like I was reliving my college work as like a junior or senior in college when someone's like, can't you see my creative vision? And I'm like, no. Like, how'd you get from A to B to C to make it work? Like, you need editorial. See, the thing is, this is what kind of, I don't want to say redeems the movie. I don't think there's a lot of redemptive qualities in this movie outside of like outside of just saying, "Hey, you want a fucking wild ass night with your friends to just be like to drink and laugh?" Sure, like even as someone who doesn't drink myself, I could see this being a really fun drinking game for the people in my life that do drink. So that I could see as redemptive quality. Right. But the reason I went into that theoretical analysis brain was I just kept over and over seeing images. I'm like, that's way too strategically, not strategically placed, but there's way too many instances of why are they constantly referring to sexual things as an insult or a punishment? Why are they constantly why is every male counselor in short shorts and a crop t-shirt? Or in the same token, why are when the female counselors or the female characters portrayed, why is it the first thing out of everyone's mouth for the first thought is constantly about sex? Constantly about like so I was like, this is way too overt to think that they weren't trying to do something. Or inherently, this director being so incomprehensibly stupid accidentally made the foundational pieces to good theory work without any editorial that it could lead someone that way. Yeah. It's just. Well, Sleepaway Camp is a series. We got to see if he directed the sequels. Who plays Angel? What? Okay. Wild. All right, dude. Like it's just way too many instances of that. Okay. I mean, the direction is incoherent. The acting is wooden as can be. The there's I mean that is the mark of someone who is full of piss and vinegar, believes the creativity is there, and does not take the second to go. How do I get? Because the thing is, this is what is odd. What is mostly odd about this for me is as much as my first thoughts are, this is incoherent drivel, and the fuck is the first thing I can think of. When I look at it from an analysis standpoint, I could see myself if someone said, "These are my pieces. This is what I want to do. How do we make it work and be respected as at least a quality kind of like cult movie?" But people know it as like, hey, you can't say it's not quality. You may not like it, you may not like the content, but it's quality. I could see these pieces working. That's the issue. Is like the only way that when you look at it, whenever Angela is threatened in a sexual way of some kind or exposing their sexual identity or their gender, so to speak, that's the only time kills happen. Like Paul pisses her off and cheats on her. That's not when Paul dies. Paul kisses her innocently, like trying to be a boy who wants more, but he still isn't like forcing himself on her. He's just like, oh, oh, super gaslighting. All the men in this film are gaslighters. So, but like, there's at least some bit of innocence the first time that he like sneaks a kiss, and she's like, and then he forces a second one on her. At least it's portrayed in an innocent and young enough way that you go, that's wrong. He should be chastised for that. But at least it's not him going, "Come on, baby," and like throws her to the ground and does something like that where it's so overt that you're like, this kid needs to get got. It's more like innocence. Yes. Right, and that's where I just go, there are too many pieces for me to say maybe. Maybe this is what they were actually trying to go for, because that's where I go with it, and that's where I could easily, like, as a challenge, I could see myself if someone said, okay, fix it. I'd be like, I'm not really going to change a lot. I'm just going to explore more. And, like, to me, another note I have down here is this movie is 10 pounds of shit in a 5-pound bag. like, this would be great as, like, a. I could see this being something in which, if this was a 4-part HBO series where each episode is about an hour long and you could really explore, maybe 6 episodes. And this is a mini series about the formation of a serial killer. That's our goal at the end of that is, how do we explain a serial killer? This could work, but it needs to be fleshed out a lot more. And I would have cut that backstory and saved it, and I would have chopped it into little pieces throughout episodes 2 through 6 until you get to the reveal. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. It is wild. Do you have any closing thoughts on Sleepaway Camp besides what I said? Oh God. If I were gonna, if I were gonna be forced in that situation, I would say no. However, I would put this caveat: if you are into horror movies of that era, or just like the absurd horror movies for the sake that they're absurd, this is for you. If you are someone who just wants to watch a quality movie, don't touch it. Don't touch it. The genre. No. No. Yeah, I think there's a little pieces here and there to at least. I will say it does make you question, huh? What? Why? All the time? And that's interesting. Oh, that'd be a good show. What are your favorite camp movies? And that showcase a summer camp in some way, shape, or form. Because I also love and adore Wet Hot American Summer. I watched that for the first time years back, but it was like 2 years before it hit like cult status, where it was on Netflix and it just kind of just lived there as like a cheap movie, where for years, and then all of a sudden I tried to go back and watch it again. I was telling Ab, like, no, it's got all these stars. It's actually kind of interesting. And she's like, well, it's not available. I was like, what do you mean it's not available? And then like a year later, they announced the reboot series and like all that kind of stuff. And I was like, oh wait, people actually now know this movie and like this movie. Um, oh yeah, yeah. But it is wild. Do you have a recommendation for our next movie? Because I want to continue this because this is absurd. Oh God. So I can tell you this: Ab wants to watch it, and I shut her down hard a couple weeks ago when she said, "Do you want to watch Madam Web?" And I said, "Absolutely not." For the sake of this podcast, I'll watch Madam Web. We'll do Madam Web next. All right. The fact that you have this will be the only thought I give on Madam Web before we go into that show, and we'll close the show on this. The fact that you have a young, clearly hot, popular actress in Sydney Sweeney who is tailor made coming off of Euphoria for Black Cat. She has the look, she has the personality, she's coming off a genre that fits that character to a T. And not only that, but that is a property, a media property, a media character that they have wanted to get off the ground for over a decade over at Sony. And they went, you know what? Let's put her in Madam Web. I don't know how else to tell you Sony has no idea what the fuck they're doing. I'm not saying Sydney Sweeney is the actress that I would pick for Black Cat. But everything about her screams she should be Black Cat. And so I'm just like, how? How did we not think of this? How did we not go, time out, time out? So we're going to have some good time. So that is going to be our next show with Dylan. We are going to be talking about, I don't know if we're necessarily reviewing, but we're just going to go over some more cult ridiculous films, and we're going to be watching the new Madam Web, which sadly came out in 2024. So we'll be watching Madam Web the next time we are with Dylan. But that is this edition of the ONETA Show. If you enjoyed yourself, I hope you give us a like, a comment, subscribe, share this with as many people as you possibly can. We appreciate it. If you're on Spotify, listen to the review. Leave us a review. We'd appreciate it. But that is it for this episode of the ONETA Show. Any closing thoughts to share with our folks here? Yeah. And be forever scarred by its final reveal shot. And with that, enjoy your summers, everyone. Enjoy your days. Peace, love, and hugs to all of you. This has been the ONETA Show. Peace!